The steel table rang like a gunshot under Victoria Lang's fist. At 3:17 a.m. in the freezing hangar, 40 engineers stood frozen while she snapped at the lone figure in grease-stained coveralls. Fix it before dawn, or hand in your badge and disappear. Elias Rivera didn't argue. He unclipped his ID badge, shut the battered toolbox with a soft click, and walked away in silence. Behind him, every monitor in the building locked into a blood-red emergency shutdown no one had ever seen before. Victoria had no idea the quiet man she had just fired carried the only master key that kept her entire $92 million flagship aircraft legally able to leave the ground. What exactly was hiding inside the wiring she had ordered him to ignore? 12 hours earlier, the same hangar had smelled of fresh coffee and jet fuel. Lang Aerospace was 3 hours from the biggest sales flight in its 27-year history. The New Horizon 7 had to impress a room packed with Pentagon procurement officers and 3 foreign sovereign wealth funds, or the $2.8 billion order would evaporate and take 1,400 jobs with it. Victoria Lang, only 10 months into the CEO chair, still measured herself against the legend of her father. She felt the board's eyes on her neck like cold fingers. COO Marcus Hale, immaculate in a charcoal Brioni suit and a Patek Philippe that caught every overhead light, kept repeating the same line. The plane is flawless. Rivera is just a bitter single dad, slowing us down with endless extra checks. Let him go. Elias had heard every word. He stood at the edge of the briefing in faded Navy coveralls, the single father of a 7-year-old son, the lowest paid technician on the floor. Most days he kept his head down and his mouth shut. Most days that was enough. But not today. At 2:14 a.m., he had quietly pulled one fiber optic run in the tail section. The factory scanners had missed it, but his own multimeter caught a 0.4-second voltage spike that should never have been there. He printed the waveform, folded the paper once, and asked for a 24-hour delay to trace it. Marcus laughed in front of the whole night shift. 24 hours? We don't have 24 minutes, Rivera. Sign the certificate or get out of the way. Elias stayed calm. He walked out to the employee lot, opened the toolbox in the bed of his old pickup, and borrowed the spare oscilloscope he kept there for emergencies. Back inside the hangar, he recorded the exact anomaly on a yellow legal pad while the rest of the team watched in uneasy silence. Tucked in the front pocket of his coveralls was a child's drawing of a paper airplane, folded into a neat square. His son had given it to him that morning with the words, "So you can fly safe, Daddy." He kept writing. Victoria gave him exactly 3 hours to prove a fault or sign the airworthiness certificate. Marcus, watching the clock, quietly planted a duplicate circuit board inside Elias's unlocked toolbox. 30 minutes later, security found it. Victoria's voice cracked across the hangar loudspeakers. "Sabotage? On my watch? You're done, Rivera. Get off my property." Elias looked straight at her, voice low but steady. "I will not certify a tampered plane." He turned, walked to the master control station, and entered a single command. Every screen in the building flashed red. The Horizon 7, the 2 backup jets, every aircraft in the fleet that used his proprietary flight guard software locked down under a pre-employment licensing clause no one had read in 8 years. Alarms began to howl. In the sudden chaos, a hidden transmitter was discovered inside the tail cone, no bigger than a matchbox, coded to a shell company tied directly to Marcus Hale. Live telemetry showed the device was still trying to send override commands even as technicians scrambled. Elias, unpaid and technically fired, stayed anyway. He isolated the unit so it could not erase its own memory. The smell of overheating lithium filled the hangar while he worked blind through thickening gray smoke, sleeves rolled high, eyes never leaving the screen. He still had the yellow legal pad in one hand and the folded paper airplane drawing resting against his heart. The alarm screamed like a wounded animal for 43 straight minutes. No one moved. Victoria stood frozen on the catwalk, her Brioni blazer now dusted with fine gray powder from the emergency vents, the $18,400 Patek on her wrist catching the strobing red lights. Marcus looked physically ill, the color draining from his face as the telemetry proved the transmitter had been pinging a server in Luxembourg every 90 seconds for the last 11 days. Elias didn't raise his voice. He simply pointed at the frozen screens and said, "That device doesn't belong to any approved vendor on a manifest. Check invoice 4,471 from 3 years ago. My signature is on it, not his." Victoria's lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time in her tenure, she had no policy to quote, no org chart to hide behind. The entire night shift stared at her, waiting. The only noise was the soft click of cooling metal and the distant whoosh of the hangar exhaust fans, trying to clear the lithium smoke. At 2:14 a.m., the regional FAA duty officer arrived in a government Suburban, summoned by the automatic lockdown beacon Elias's command had triggered. Her name badge read Carter, and she carried a tablet already displaying the pre-employment licensing agreement Elias had buried in the original firmware. Page 17, paragraph 3C, the clause that let the original developer remotely immobilize every airframe if core safety protocols were compromised. She looked from a transmitter to Elias to Victoria and asked one quiet question. Who exactly is in charge of airworthiness here tonight? Victoria's manicured nails dug into her palms until the skin blanched. He folded the legal pad shut. The paper airplane sat between them like a fragile truce. I'm the man you told to get out of the way in front of 42 witnesses. Victoria swallowed. For the first time, she noticed the faint scar that ran along his left forearm. Old, surgical, the kind you get when shrapnel has to come out in a hurry. She had seen that scar once before, years earlier, in a classified briefing photo. The name attached to it then had not been Rivera. Before she could press him, the door opened again. Marcus entered, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. He had spent the last hour being interviewed by 2 federal agents who were now swabbing the transmitter for prints. He looked at Elias, and the words seemed to cost him physical effort. I planted the board. I needed the quarterly bonus attached to on-time certification. I didn't know about the transmitter. I swear I didn't know. The confession landed like a dropped wrench. Victoria's head snapped toward her deputy. Marcus kept talking, voice cracking. I thought if the plane went out dirty and came back dirty, we could blame it on the previous maintenance team. I didn't think it would. I didn't think he would actually lock everything down. Elias studied him for a long moment, then reached into his coverall pocket and produced the folded drawing again. He slid it across the table until it rested against Marcus's trembling hand. My son drew that this morning. He's 7. He thinks his dad still knows how to keep planes in the air. I intend to prove him right. You can help me do that, or you can keep lying. Your choice. Marcus stared at the crayon lines. 2 stick figures, one large, one small, a tiny airplane between them with wings that looked more like smiles. His shoulders sagged. For the first time in his polished career, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who had just watched his future collapse in real time. Victoria watched the exchange and felt something cold settle in her stomach. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. The insurers wanted answers. The FAA wanted chain of custody paperwork. And every pilot on the schedule was already calling in, asking why their jets were showing maintenance lockout on the company app. She cleared her throat. The board will want a full report. They'll want to know how a night shift mechanic ended up with root-level administrative privileges on software we paid 3 consulting firms to vet. Elias stood slowly. The chair legs scraped like a starting gun. Then tell them the truth. Tell them you hired the original developer of the Flight Guard suite at $1 a year because no one else would touch the legacy codebase after the last crash investigation. Tell them I tried to warn you about the unpatched vulnerability in the telemetry relay 6 weeks ago. Tell them a man you just fired in front of the whole night shift is the only person alive who can bring those planes back online before the next scheduled departure at 1,400 hours. He picked up the yellow legal pad, tucked the paper airplane back against his heart, and walked toward the door. Victoria stepped aside without thinking. As he passed her, she caught the faint scent of jet fuel and solder on his clothes. The same smell that had once clung to the flight suits of pilots who flew missions with numbers like 287 attached to their names. Outside, the morning sun was just cresting the control tower. Reporters were already shouting questions through the fence. A single camera caught Elias in profile as he crossed the tarmac toward the grounded Horizon 7, its cockpit dark, its belly still warm from the aborted pre-flight. Victoria watched him go. Her phone buzzed again. Another board member, another demand. She let it ring. For the first time in her decorated career, she had no script, no press release, no elegant way to spin what had just happened. All she had was the memory of that child's drawing resting on the table like a quiet indictment, and the growing certainty that the man she had tried to destroy in front of everyone was about to save the company she had sworn to protect. And he still had 21 hours and 47 minutes left on the clock she had given him. Elias didn't waste the 21 hours and 47 minutes. By 0600 the next morning, the first Horizon 7 was breathing again. He patched the telemetry relay with 3 lines of code he had written in a desert hangar 12 years earlier. At 0830, the second aircraft rolled out of the hangar with fresh avionics logs. By noon, the entire fleet was green. No press conference, no victory lap. Just the low hum of turbines spinning up on runway 12R and the smell of warm hydraulic fluid drifting across the apron. Victoria watched every second from the glass-walled operations center. Her Brioni jacket hung crooked now, one button missing from where she had twisted it during the 2:14 a.m. emergency call. The Patek on her wrist read 1345 when the tower finally cleared the last departure. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass and whispered the only word that felt honest. Damn. The board summoned an emergency meeting for 1,600 hours in the main auditorium. Every department head, every shift supervisor, every mechanic who had stood frozen while she tore Elias apart the night before filled the 200 seats. The same faces that had looked away when she called him scrap. They sat in pressed shirts and coveralls, silent, waiting. Elias walked in last. Same gray coveralls, same faint scent of jet fuel and solder. The child drawing was folded once in his left hand like a boarding pass. He took the seat at the far end of the long table, the one reserved for contractors. No one spoke. Victoria rose. The click of her Italian heels echoed off the high ceiling. She placed both palms flat on the mahogany, knuckles white. For 10 full seconds, the only sound was the soft rustle of 200 people breathing. She looked straight at Elias. I owe you an apology. Her voice cracked on the last word. Last night, I stood in front of every person in this room and called you worthless. I mocked the only man who still remembered why this airline ever flew safely. I gave you 22 hours because I wanted you gone before the press arrived. You answered by giving us back our fleet. I was arrogant. I was blind. And I was wrong. The room stayed perfectly still. Victoria turned to the rest of them. Effective immediately, Elias Rivera is reinstated as Chief Systems Architect with full voting rights on the board. His salary will be back paid for every hour he worked at $1 a year. And if he'll have me, I will personally step down as acting CEO until the board decides who should lead a company that almost died because its leader forgot how to listen. She looked back at Elias. Tears cut clean lines through yesterday's mascara. Privately, I am sorry, yes. I'm so damn sorry. Then louder, so every microphone in the room caught it. Publicly, I was wrong. This man saved Horizon Airlines in full view of everyone who watched me try to bury him. I hope the rest of you will forgive me the way I hope he one day can. She sat down. For 3 heartbeats, the auditorium held its breath. Then the first clap came from the back row, a night shift mechanic with grease still under his fingernails. It rolled forward like thunder. 200 people stood at once. The sound crashed against the glass walls and rattled the model planes suspended from the ceiling. Elias didn't smile. He simply unfolded the child's drawing and laid it flat on the table in front of him. The crayon airplane with the tiny stick figure dad in the cockpit stared back at the entire room. He ran one thumb across the faded signature in the corner, "Love, Mateo." Later that evening, the hangar lights were dimmed to a soft amber. Elias sat on an overturned crate. The paper airplane balanced on his knee. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from a thermos someone had left for him. Victoria stood 10 feet away, arms wrapped around herself against the night chill rolling in off the runway. "I meant every word," she said quietly. He nodded once. "I know." She took one careful step closer. "I still don't understand why you came back after everything the NTSB reports took from you. After they grounded you. After they took your wings." Elias looked up. The overhead lights caught the silver at his temples. "Because my son drew me a plane that could still fly even when the world said it couldn't. I figured the least I could do was make sure other fathers got to come home to their own drawings." Victoria's shoulders dropped. She reached in her pocket and pulled out a single brass key card, the one that had opened every executive door she had slammed behind her for the last 4 years. "I don't deserve to hold this anymore," she said, offering it to him. "But if you'll let me stay on as your operations lead, I'll spend every day proving I finally understand what this company was built on." Elias studied her for a long moment. Then he took the key card, turned it over once, and slid it back in her palm. "Keep it. Just use it better next time." She closed her fingers around the plastic, eyes shining. Outside, the first stars pricked the sky above the control tower. A lone horizon, 7 lifted off runway 12R, its navigation lights painting twin streaks of red and green across the dark. The sound of its engines rolled over the tarmac like distant applause. Elias folded the child's drawing and tucked it back against his heart, right where it had always belonged. Some debts aren't paid with revenge. They're paid with second chances. They're paid with the quiet knowledge that the lowest man in the room was never low at all. And sometimes the person who tried to break you is the very one who ends up helping carry the pieces home. That night, somewhere over the Atlantic, a little boy named Mateo would hear his father's voice on the satellite phone and smile at a fresh crayon airplane taped to the fridge. And Victoria Lang would stand on the empty observation deck, Patek forgotten on her wrist, and watch the lights of a fleet she had almost lost disappear into the horizon she had once thought she owned. The smell of jet fuel and solder still lingered in the air. It always would, because some legacies refused to stay buried, and the man who carried them had never really left.